Hello and welcome to Identity Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue, and today is episode 67. The topic is demystify. No, the topic is not. The topic is the 6 W's of identity security. And our guest today is Akshay Desai, founder and CEO of ObserveID. Welcome, Akshay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mike.
And our co-host today is Richard Weeks, head of channel and alliance operations, also at ObserveID. Welcome, Richard.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Mike. Thanks a lot for inviting us.
So I said something weird happens every time. This is the first time I ever got the title wrong, so we're off to a good start. But before we dive into the actual topic, it's always nice to hear from the guests and their background. So Akshay, maybe you could start. You're the founder and CEO of ObserveID, but how did you actually get here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, again. Thanks for inviting and appreciate everyone listening into this podcast. So a little bit about myself. I've been an entrepreneur all my life, Mike, to be honest. I started my first business as soon as I graduated from my undergraduate degree. Since that journey, I've had multiple business along the way. How did I move into these whole identity industries? I graduated with my master's degree, actually in an engineering degree. And at the time, we had a big boom in 2000, as we all know, which kind of prompted me to change my career into the computer world. And that journey
Did
has continued.
You say 2000?
In 2000, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 2000. Yeah,
needed to replay that.
Long time, as you can see, I've been around for for years now. So I started my career. Then I joined large conglomerate. I worked at Oracle. I worked at Hitachi, KPMG, you name it. Every single large company I worked. Before I went on my own about 15 years ago, I started another company in the computer. I just couldn't take it, the corporate America, corporate world. And I said, I have to do something on my own. Let's forget about it. I'm not going to work for anybody else. That leads me to start a company called Guardian Technology Group, which is an MSP business, been around for almost 15 years, serving the mid-market area. As a part of that MSP journey, we realized that there were companies within the corporate America, like especially in the mid-market, they were really struggling with their identity security problem. There were legacy platforms that existed that kind of, in order to address an end-to-end identity security, you have to have the multiple platforms, plethora of employees to support those applications, and they were not very cost effective. So that started me to think, and we actually had customers, to be honest, in the Guardian Technology Group that were actually facing the similar challenges. That led me to believe that there has to have a better way to do these things. And that's where our journey of ObserveID started. When we started the ObserveID with my co-founder, Shrikant Pale, who comes also with significant industry experience, the whole purpose was to begin with a developed platform that kind of gives a converged platform for the organizations that were struggling with this kind of issues. So they don't have to go and acquire multiple platforms. They don't need an army of people to support. It was a lot more agile as well as nimble from the implementations and their adaptability standpoint. So that's the entire journey. Cool. This is where we are.
So before we dive into the content, I just wanted to give Rick a chance to say hello. Rick, how did you find yourself in the identity, converged identity space?
By providence, I think morally by fate, but it was part by accident, part by creating your own luck. But I started out joining the Air Force right out of high school, and I was a mainframe computer operator, focused around secure computing, and also data encryption. Spent some time in the Middle East working with the AWACS and doing a lot of, manually setting encryption keys every morning so that we could get telemetry data from all different kinds of sources, RF, landline, etc., microwave. And so I got a really good tech exposure at a young age. This was before mid-range computing, so I'm dating myself here. But from the Air Force, I left and I got into networking. I saw that as a very hot area, and I focus for the next 10 years or so on network engineering. So LANs, WANs, TCP/IP, network monitoring, network management, analytics, and I worked for credit unions and banks, and even worked for Fidelity and built out a huge data center for Fidelity. So I used to be technical. Now I know just enough to be dangerous. And then moved into identity security when networking became commoditization, and started focusing really with network security companies like Centrify in the early days of authorization. Worked for CyberArk, built their channels and alliances organization when they were first started, and then moved over to Thycotic, which was acquired by Delinea. So I've really grown up in identity and access management, all phases of the game, but really focused on privileged access management and integrations with identity governance like SailPoint and Savient. So that brings me around to where we are today. We're now
So
kind of focused.
Everything.
Sorry?
A little bit of everything, really. Privilege access management and cryptography and governance. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, it gives me kind of a unique view on the market. I really believe that converged identity security solutions are kind of the end result of the evolution of identity and access management. The silo idea versus the converged single pane of glass, single control plane idea. And I think Akshay is spot on with his idea 3 or 4 years ago to create this company, because I've said for the last 10 years, if a company like a CyberArk or a SailPoint could merge and have one user interface that did everything, that would be nirvana, as opposed to having all these individual silos for PAM, IAM, IGA, access reviews, etc. And
Right.
We've recently learned that we've got a pretty good mousetrap here. So
Let's actually dive into that. If it's okay, I'll share just a quick diagram, which is more from the user perspective. But actually, maybe you could walk us through this. What is a converged identity security platform, and what segment of the B2B market are you developing the solution for?
Yeah, great question, Mike. So as Eric kind of mentioned about, right, it's the whole convergence about or having the identity security in a silos environment, I think moving away from that, breaking those barriers from the silos and getting into a one unified, centralized identity security platform. And this is where this whole conversion comes into the picture. Again, there were traditional legacy systems that existed in the marketplace that were addressing specific issues, let's say privileged access management or the governance aspect of it, or maybe a just-in-time provisioning. And the challenges with for organizations is having all these various platforms kind of very difficult to manage. Even if you talk to any security professional in today's world, well, I have almost 20, 30 different platforms. What am I going to do with these all platforms keep acquiring it? I need a one centralized dashboard. And actually, it not only just tells me what to do, but actually does it for us as well. Otherwise,
I heard one customer tell me, enterprise customer, that they basically had one of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a typical scenario. And this is where this identity modernization comes in, that I'm sure we'll, again, touch base into our podcast. But we have, in fact, we are seeing in our short journey, if 2 to 3 years, that even the enterprise customer that you talked about, Mike, they're absolutely looking to modernize their IAM journey as well. They still have the legacy platform, and they're looking for the next gen IAM platform. How can they leverage? And the convergence aspect of it is very important, because it's not only just providing the visibility or observability, it helps you understand the anomalies, and this is where the intelligence part comes into the picture. Allows you to take in automated actions. In fact, enforce the least privilege, which is the core of the entire identity security, ensuring the right people have right access at the right time, and meet the regulatory and compliance requirements. So for ObserveID, the conversion includes not only just your IAM platform, so the entire onboarding, offboarding JML as we grow up knowing the JML concept, but also just-in-time provisioning along with the intelligence aspect of it, and running all kind of compliance requirements. That's all combining into one single platform.
So, Rick, all of these things in this diagram are things that a customer wants, like comprehensive security coverage, simplified management. enhanced visibility and control, improved compliance and reporting, cost efficiency, seamless user experience, scalability, and flexibility. I'm reading this because we might have a podcast or publish this as a podcast and people won't be able to see it. So these are all sort of things that, that an enterprise customer might want. But I have this joke where I say, like, the list of things your company can do to improve their security posture are basically like infinite. And when you can do anything, when there's an infinite number of things you can do to actually improve your security posture, I think it becomes a challenge of what do you to actually do. And so, Rick, I'm wondering, in this list of like possible like solutions, do you hear that there's one particular driver that's actually driving these mid-sized businesses you're targeting to actually engage with ObserveID?
That's a really thoughtful question, Mike. And I, in my opinion, no. I think every organization has different architecture, has different compliance requirements, has a different place where they are in their roadmap journey, their cybersecurity, improvement, which is a continuous improvement idea. And so many of these enterprises have completely different environments. Therefore, the things that they're attacking next in their roadmap are all different based on where they are in their journey. I think it's really important to know that, we're not foolish enough to think that we're going to go in and replace a large legacy IGA or privileged access management vendor in a large enterprise, because that would be, not a good business model, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, we can act as a front end. We're very complementary to the existing platforms that are in place for a couple of reasons. Number one, we can connect to multiple sources of truth. The fact that we're connecting to various HR systems, ITSM systems, other identity systems, and we provide a central repository for all entitlements. We also provide a single access control point. We call it the access control point for everything in your enterprise, whether it's on-prem, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's legacy, whether it's new, whether it's SaaS. We can connect to multiple applications, multiple sources of truth, and truly give a single pane of glass from a management perspective that has ITDR-like functions. So, and by the way, over time, if you want to migrate your privileged access management or your identity governance to a converged platform, you can. But right now, we're providing an easy button, I think, for large enterprises to be able to do things that they can't currently do or that are too expensive or time-consuming. And things like optimizing user access reviews, truly doing it in an automated fashion, providing a single 360-degree view of all identities, both human and non-human, and what they're doing, and a baseline for that, and risk scoring. So there's a lot of sophisticated capabilities in our platform. And we had one customer recently tell us, it sounds too good to be true. And in many ways, it is, but in many ways, it's not, because we kind of are, I think, where a lot of vendors are striving to get to. And that is a single subscription to a vendor that can provide a comprehensive identity and access management platform, including continuous monitoring and management. So, you contrast that. And in the mid-market, there's a lot of greenfield. The middle market, the mid part of the pyramid has a lot of logos, and they're not nearly as far along in their journey. So we think that we're a great converged solution for mid-market, but we're also a very complementary solution in the large enterprise as a front end and solving some use cases that they currently can't do with their disjointed silo strategy.
Great. So I want to dive into our topic, which is more around authorization and especially connecting authorization to governance. But Akshay, maybe you could just build on what Rick was talking about a little bit. And I'm just wondering, it is a crowded market. I think that SailPoint has been saying that they're a one-stop shop for identity, for years. So I think this has been the holy grail of identity, has been to offer a one-stop shop for access, governance, and provisioning, and maybe even authorization. What do you think is the unique selling proposition? How do you differentiate ObserveID from the other B2B SaaS vendors in the enterprise identity space?
Great question, Mike. Yes, you are right. I mean, a lot of these legacy platforms are, so to speak, 800-pound gorillas that's been around for years. They are changing their messaging constantly, right? And now they're all talking about identity security. They're all talking about one-stop solutions. They're all talking about convergence and all this stuff. The challenge these legacy platforms are really having is the technology. I mean, they were developed to solve a single issue and not the convergence aspect of it. Now, how are they addressing it? They're purchasing multiple different companies, and they're trying to put together a converge or a one-stop solutions. We all know when you acquire different product or different companies, come with a different mindset, different roadmaps. It hardly actually works. I mean, one of the example that I always bring it to the table is Oracle. I mean, we all know during our life history that Oracle has acquired what, 25, 26. I mean, I even forgot the number of counts, to be honest, companies by now, and they all independently exist even today after years and years of
Just in the identity space you're talking about, they've probably done hundreds of acquisitions. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, correlating the same thing, the companies like SailPoint or others that we're talking about, they acquire so many companies trying to plug the holes, but it's a different story to actually put a one single front and tell that it's a all one-stop solutions. The advantage that we have is the ObserveID platform was developed with that mindset to begin with. So we knew exactly what we're trying to get into that, right? The other advantage we have is a technology advancement. Everything is built in the cloud. We ourselves have a cloud first strategy. Everything is in microservices and Kubernetes and Docker containers. Imagine the old legacy system that were built on where you need to spin up multiple servers, install, and then you forget about upgrading it, right? So that's another unique advantage that we have. And the solutions that make up the convergence of it, so identity access management, privilege access management, governance, they're all so tightly connected in our opinion. Imagine if you want to run a governance on a PAM solutions, but you don't have an authoritative source at that point in time. So yes, you have a visibility in your account, but you don't know what that account belongs to who. So you have to have an identity component that's kind of integrated with those solutions. And that's the mindset that we started with this entire platform. And that's what we believe we have a leg up from the legacy system that pretends to be a one-stop solutions, but they're not really a one-stop solutions. And to add into all that stuff, the cloud adds another entire different component. And this is where we believe that we have a unique value prop because, our platform is agnostic, whether you are in a cloud, whether you are what cloud service provider, whether it's Azure or Oracle, it doesn't matter, on-premises or legacy system, we can integrate with your entire IT landscape. So there are no exclusions involved into our platform. And the advantage for that is once you go into the cloud, let's say, you are a new company, very cloud focused, cloud first strategy yourself. The resources in the cloud environments, as we know, are much more dynamic. Resources are getting spin off right and left. You're destroying them, removing them. You're logging in through a federated account. So there's a lot more complexity that's built into these multi-cloud environments, and that all we can solve with our platform. That's absolutely a unique feature we believe that we have into the platform as well.
So this is a good chance for us to sort of spin into the topic. And thank you for providing me with a relatively short blog. Because sometimes I get bogged down in reading like 50-page white papers or studies. But I thought this blog was thought-provoking because, I think authorization has become top of mind for a lot of IT security experts because we spend so much time on the authentication, on the who. And now that that's become more settled, I think there's a more serious discussion going on around how do we control access? How do we externalize policies and normalize the review of policies? And how do we connect that to our governance infrastructure so that we can review and do, what we might call access certifications in the past, but maybe we need a new metaphor. So I'm curious, what do you see as sort of some of the changes in how we're able to address these challenges now that authentication is more settled? What are the next things that companies are really focusing on?
Yeah, I think, you brought a great point, Mike, right? So in the traditional world, the whole reasons of authentications and authorizations was to meet your regulatory and compliance requirements. I think everyone is looking in the next gen identity evolutions, right? So in the sense that it just rubber stamping who has what access is no longer serving the purpose, right? Yes, it may meet your some of the regulatory requirements, but the organizations are looking for a higher return on their investment. They just don't want to spend millions of dollars just to meet some rubber stamping, some compliance. And this is where the whole user behavior analysis and identity intelligence component that comes in, which ObserveID effectively uses it, because we monitor user behavior analysis continuously. Well, who is accessing, where are they accessing from, what operational activities are performing, and we map every single activity back to the metadata or a fine-grained entitlements. And we monitor that over the period of times, and we make a recommendation. Here is a policy that's more close to what a user or an identity is doing their day-to-day activities, right? And this is where we believe the market is headed to, which is what exactly how you're identifying anomalies based on the user behavior, making recommendations. And this is where we are also leveraging artificial intelligence. I think that's also helping us big time, kind of ensuring, recommending who should have what access based on their user behavior analysis and what they have done over the period of time. So we believe that's where the market is headed to.
Rick, I'm curious, you've been at this for a while. What are some of the changes that you've seen maybe in the last even 2 or 3 years that are notable compared to, I feel like governance has been really stable from the 2000s to today, but what are the changes, but maybe that's getting shaken up now, and what are the changes that you're noticing in the market from someone who's sort of been at it for a while?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. I think that the entire early identity and access management market was created just for operational efficiency. Having some kind of lifecycle of management about users logging in from a directory services and from an application perspective. But it really took off with regulatory compliance. Back in my early days with CyberArk, we had to educate the audience why privileged access management was a problem. And we had to educate the auditors, the ISACA folks and the federal folks at NIST, why knowing who your admins are and knowing what they have access to is a big part of IT risk, right? And so as the compliance regs got teeth, SOX, NIST, et cetera, it really spurred many companies to adopt technologies like privileged access management and identity governance because they had to satisfy an audit requirement, and because of the plethora of preponderance of cyber breaches. Since many of these breaches were based on the identity stack, it was really time to up their game. So we've seen these silos just grow exponentially over the last decade. And right now, if you take a look at the typical IT budget, there are huge costs associated with maintaining a separate PAM, a separate IGA, separate MFA SSO, and then how do you cobble it all together to get the right kind of audit reports? But how much does it cost to maintain each one of those platforms, both personnel-wise and cost-wise from an annual subscription? So I think what we're seeing now, the next generation, the change that I see happening is around cost containment. The ability for vendors to take a look at their existing IT costs and do some things that will make them even more compliant, simplify their operational efficiency, but also reduce their total cost of ownership. And there are a lot of ROI benefits here from a converged perspective that we could go into if you'd like.
And it's interesting how maybe these converged platforms like ObserveID are making some features that would have taken you a long time to build yourselves more accessible to maybe a mid-sized company who didn't have a whole IT staff.
Actually, that kind of begs the question around the connector idea, right? Maybe you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for reminding me, Rick. So it's basically what Mike Rick is talking about is we have a different type of technology that, I talked about covering the entire IT landscape, right? Whether it's you're in a cloud, whether you're in on-premises, whether you have legacy systems. I think important is ensuring that entire IT landscape and providing a complete 360 visibility, not just talking about it, but actually doing it. Two different story. You will see a lot of companies, again, saying they do that, but as soon as you start implementations, they'll say, okay, you can connect to this and you cannot connect to this one. So I think our connector technology that Rick is talking about, sort of a low-code, no-code connector technology we provide through four different mechanisms. Obviously, traditional your database JDBC, ODBC connector, of course, the API mechanism as well as the skin mechanism that's predominant into the next gen identity platforms that you would normally see nowadays. But we also cover the legacy system. We are not forgetting the legacy system. The reality is, as much as we want to move into the cloud and as much as every organization wants to go into that, there are a lot of reasons why they cannot completely move into the cloud. We all know, right? Whether it are political reasons, whether security reasons, or simply the technology is not there for them to completely move. And so we wanted to ensure that we cover the entire ecosystem. And so we have a built-in RPA bot that actually connects to these legacy systems or homegrown or custom applications along with CSV files as well.
RPA is robotic
Yes.
process automation, just for
Absolutely.
our audience who might not know. So you have an RPA bot that is basically is that the connector itself? So the connector, the bot is actually connecting to these systems and interacting with them. Is that the idea?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said, Mike. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and RPA is one of the fastest growing markets in the tech sector right now.
Yes.
Well, let's actually pivot back to the the topic around the 6 Ws. So I'm really interested in the authorization topic personally, and so I selfishly want to ask some questions about authorization. But there's been a lot of innovation in the authorization space, and as a SaaS provider, you're sort of making some of these decisions on behalf of your customers about the technology. Maybe you're curating a little bit, and I'm wondering if you're gravitating to a specific type of policy syntax. For example, we have some new syntaxes like Rego or Cedar or OpenFGA. And if you see any other opportunities in some of these innovations now that Auth-N is more settled and we're moving into Auth-C, I'm curious if you have an opinion as to a direction that you're going with regard to the authorization stack, which could really impact how the customer can express policies and how they would review them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, excellent questions and excellent topic. I mean, this is a huge topic in itself, to be honest, right? And it's evolving as we speak. I mean, the technology just in general in front of our eyes, every other day there is something new comes up. And so the approach that we're taking, Mike, our platform, we want to be as flexible as possible and agile as possible. And this is why the technology that we have, we believe that we're headed, we're good for the next couple of decades, the way the technology that has been built on the ObserveID side. And no matter what comes in, whether it's Auth-C or Auth-Z or something X comes tomorrow, I'm not sure, we are ready to adopt whatever the new technology comes and make sure that our platform supports all of those technologies. At the end of the day, we're not trying to enforce anything to our customers. We work with our customer to ensure what works for them, as opposed to kind of telling them one way or the different directions, right? So not everybody is as advanced as that, as companies are still going into that area. So like I said, we're flexible and we are trying to cater all of those and for the future authorization mechanism as well. That's our intent.
Rick, so one of my theories has been that the regulations are going to change a little bit. And so, for example, a lot of regulations specify that companies need MFA. But we've heard that it's a best practice that companies review, let's say, their authorization policies. But do you see actually regulations that say companies should externalize and review their policies? And do you see, or if not, do you see that changing, where to get SOC 2 certified, there's going to be more regulations around how you actually manage the policies and authorization in your organization?
Well, despite the change in leadership in the U.S. government and the kind of the less governance approach to the current winner, we all agree that this compliance is not going away, right? As a matter of fact, when it comes to IT compliance, because of its association with IT risk and with cyber insurability, I think it's clear that these regulations are going to continue to evolve to get more granular and to provide higher levels of at least, you have to throw the 0-day argument out the window because there's really no stopping a sophisticated adversary with 0-day exploits. But if you look at the everyday kind of malware slash, cyber engineering and the attacks on the identity stack, identity is the perimeter, right? And so we really do believe that there'll be more, not less, going forward. They're just going to continue to evolve. And the question is how much is it going to cost me, not only to meet my cybersecurity, cyber insurability controls, but also satisfy the auditors today and then satisfy them tomorrow. To go back to a point that Axel just made about applications, if you really want to do access certification in a large enterprise, you have to certify access to every application that you have, not just the ones that are conveniently connected to your identity stack, right? We had one large customer that we were working with recently who has up to 2 million identities, both human and non-human. And they had, what was it, 1,000 applications, Axel? 2,000 applications?
Yeah, I had heard about 2000. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the question is they've probably only got 40 or 50 of them that are currently actually being controlled by their identity stack.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room for improvement here. And I think that's why I brought up the connector idea, because right now for large stack vendors to connect to these legacy apps requires a Herculean effort and a lot of cost associated with it. And there's just got to be an easy button for this. There's got to be an easier way to monitor every identity in your organization, both human and not human, and alert when there's problems, but also provide the level of access control that the auditors are demanding. So it's going to get more complicated. And the idea is to simplify the platform that's doing that work.
Yeah, just to add,
more complicated might be good for us vendors, right?
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
Axel, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just to add what Rick was talking about and your questions about the policy review, so the review is one aspect of it. Like we talk about the regulatory and compliance requirement, obviously. What we are proposing to our customers and what we bring to the table is continuous monitoring, not necessarily rubber stamping. We have heard about the CI/CD pipeline, continuous improvement, continuous development, things like that into the DevOps world. I think the similar concept needs to come and evolve within the identity space as well, where you're constantly reviewing what the users are doing it and making recommendations or adjusting the policy based on what the users are doing it. And that helps you identify the anomalies much, much faster, take a proactive approach, increase or mitigate your security risk, to be honest, rather than waiting for collections of data and then reviewing it and reviewing after 3 months or 6 months and saying, do they have right access or not? It's too late to review all that stuff. So in our opinion, and this is exactly what we are doing at ObserveID, is continuous implementations of this policy, review it based on what we see the users are doing it. And this is where the whole mapping of the actions to the metadata is very, very important, especially in the cloud. And the reason I keep bringing cloud, because cloud is much more dynamic nowadays. You in the old days, you would create a users once a day or once a week. You kind of pull the data, then you assign a user some policies just in case if they need it, and things like that. But as we adopt cloud more and more, even in the enterprise level, I think this continuous review of the policies and improvements and enforcement has become the center of it to reduce this risk, in my opinion.
It's kind of like the real-time monitoring aspect versus the periodicity of when you run these reports to satisfy your auditors or do your access certifications or access reviews. Having an expert system that's monitoring all the time that can not only provide instant risk scoring, but also instant anomaly detection can be very, very valuable with regards to your cybersecurity posture.
I'm just wondering how you actually do it, because all the older tools, let's say the last generation of tools like SailPoint, did a good job at RBAC. You defined a role.
Exactly.
You say this user has access to, or is this role and therefore has access to these resources. You periodically review those resources through access certification campaigns. that works fine, and that's still a really important part of what enterprises do today. But what we found is that that model doesn't address the totality of policies that we need. And so what I'm hearing you say is that we are doing more than that. We want to cover more applications because this process is too slow. But there is no equivalent review process for, let's say, non-human identities, or maybe for policies that don't reflect roles. So how do you actually bridge that so that to make it consumable by the business people who are deciding what these policies should be? I hear you say we make it easier, but I really don't see how they even manage these policies or how it becomes easier.
Yeah, I mean, great question. So I'll take that question, Dick, if you don't mind. So, I mean, you talked about the RBAC, right? So RBAC is still the center of the identity and access management, right? So all you're using is RBAC is basically birthright roles and IT roles and functional roles to grant the access. Okay, so that part is more of an operational efficiency. It's easy to manage the roles versus managing an access to an individual user ID, right? It's not really necessarily addressing your security. See, or again, as Rick mentioned, the whole evolutions of identity and access management was operational efficiency, meet your compliance requirement. Now we see that the organizations are seeking to improve the return on investment. It's moving away from operational efficiency to a security. Identity is becoming a security challenge, not just your operational challenge, right? And this is where the whole policy reviewing the user behavior analysis, and how we do is we watch the user's activity, every single activity. Let's say you have an account in Microsoft Azure or AWS. We monitor the user, what activities they're performing on a daily basis. And let's say all they're doing is going in and clicking and listing some S3 buckets or creating buckets and removing buckets, and that's all. That's the extent of what their jobs is for the specific period of time. We would monitor each and every activity, map it with using our own developed metadata to a policy that, based on the actions that you've performed over the 90 days, 180 days, this is the policy that you should have versus this is a policy you have, right? So this is how we are basically ensuring right people have right access to the right resource at the right time. And then the concept of just-in-time provisioning that we're all familiar with it makes much more effective, because now if you need something outside of what your normal activity is, hey, go ahead and request for a just-in-time provisioning, which goes through the approval process, grant access for a specific period of time, and then it goes away.
As I said, the baseline is really role-based access control. RBAC is something that companies have been dragged kicking and screaming to do over the last decade, but it does simplify things. If coming from HR, you've got a request for a user with a specific job or a role to have some basic entitlements that are kind of normal and authorized for that role. And then beyond that, we have the explicit entitlements, which can be different for every individual. And based on just-in-time access, as Axay pointed out. So a user can request access to something that isn't in their baseline profile, and then that can be reviewed and either agreed to or not agreed to based on the time of day, based on what they're accessing, based on whether there's a trouble ticket or an ITSM ticket open for that. Change order management kind of all dovetails together.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's why the connectors are important, because in order for you to get data back about what the user is doing, you need sort of a stream of data from each application in order to establish this baseline activity. So is the idea more that you're connecting to these systems, gathering data, and let's say observing what the data is to create a baseline, and then from there trying to look for an anomalous activity versus trying to say, okay, we're going to top down say, here's what everyone should be doing?
Correct. Yeah, we'd absolutely collect the data from the endpoints. That's one way. Or if they're going through our platform, then obviously what requests they're making and what activities they're performing, because we have an ability to connect to the endpoint directly from our platform, whether it's an RDP or whether it's a web browser and things like that. So we can monitor from that aspect as well, especially for the privileged access management. And the one last thing I wanted to point out, Mike, here is, I talked about the continuous policy review. Similar concept we are putting into a continuous access review certification as well. what we have done is built in a risk score within our platform, and you can kick off your certification review based on the risk score. Hey, if a user or an identity has a risk score higher than X number, kick off the certification review immediately, because those are risky accounts. We want to do a review. So our whole concept is a continuous review process, continuous adjustment into policy, not necessarily wait. And then this is how we're actually bringing this whole operational efficiency with the compliance and kind of expanding into the security, because we truly believe identity security is the center of zero trust that we are used to nowadays.
Cool. Well, maybe we could go into last thoughts. Anything? How can customers find out more? Any events or conferences coming up? Akshay, you want to start?
Absolutely. So thank you, first of all, for inviting. Thank you for listening, everybody. You can check us out at www.observeid.com. We believe that identity security is the center of the zero trust going forward. Identity security, not just for the enterprise customers. I think it applies to everyone, small, mid-market, government, non-government. Identity security is an important aspect of every organizations to protect their reputations. That data security has to be the priority for every organization.
Cool. Rick, before we break, any last thoughts?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. I'd like to make a couple predictions. First of all, the age of identity security 2.0 is here. It's going to take 4 or 5 years worth of evolution for companies to begin to adopt more and more converged platforms. But ObserveID is really a pioneer in this space, and we kind of embody the end result of the evolution of identity security. Based on the fact that legacy identity stacks are too expensive, cumbersome, and dated, there's a lot of market drivers right now for lower TCO and improved ROI in IT operations. And I'm going to make a prediction that identity modernization will become a hallmark advisory service over the next 5 years for not only Big Four, but second-tier cyber advisories around the evolution of identity security.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's like companies have a lot of data, and how they make sense of that data and manage it is becoming a real challenge. So I think you're right about that. Okay, well that's all we got. Next Tuesday we have an episode with Daniel Goldscheider on UN and Open Wallet digital public infrastructure collaboration. The Open Wallet Foundation is doing a lot of great work building software, so that should be a good conversation. It's been super successful. And just want to say thank you, Akshay and Rick, for joining us today. Thank you, audience, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, audience. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Bye-bye.